What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Mafia Podcast, NBA edition. We are continuing our mini series breaking down each and every NBA roster, giving a recap of the 2019-2020 season, and then looking forward to their upcoming offseason, which is right around the corner. Today's topic of conversation is the Brooklyn Nets, so we are rolling with our playoff teams from last season. My name is Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy, and I'm here with my co host, as always, the Fantasy Caveman. I will dive right into recapping the 2019 2020 season for the Brooklyn Nets. They were 35 and 37 last year, finished as the seventh seed in the East. They had two coaches split time last year. Kenny Atkinson was 28 and 34. Jock Vaughn was 7 and 3 during his time as head coach. They moved on and they hired Steve Nash, which I know has been in the news quite a bit. And I'll get your thoughts in a few minutes if you like that move. I love Steve Nash. I think he's a great leader on the court. It sounds like he has a great connection with Kevin Durant. So I think this is has the potential to be a great hire here. They did end up getting swept by the Raptors in the first round, 4-0. I don't think many. I know you and I didn't expect them to get swept. They played really tough defense, but injuries really riddled this team in the bubble. They were a shell of themselves in the bubble, and they really struggled. So their roster was not the same. But there's a bright outlook moving forward with Kevin Durant coming back, Kyrie playing a full season. Hopefully, there's a lot of excitement here. So I'll roll through their season leaders last year, and then we'll kind of start to look forward a little bit. But their point leader was Kyrie Irving, who did play 20 games for them, averaged 27.4 points. Spencer Dinwiddie was second with 20.6. Karis LeVert was third with 18.7 points. Then you had Joe Harris with 14.5 points. Taurean Prince with 12.1. I combined points and Prince there. Taurean Prince with 12.1 points. We have to mention Timothy Cabaret. He was very good in the bubble, and we mentioned that several times. Or Cabarrot, sorry. I kept saying Cabaret because I wanted to be a fancy French man, but it's Timothy Cabarrot. He actually led the team in the bubble, averaged about 15 points, averaged 16 in the playoffs. So
he's signed through next year too.
Yep. So
but I think he did enough to earn himself. He'll be around next year for him.
Yeah, definitely. He'll be a role player for him, and definitely showed some improvements, and definitely his stock rose during the bubble here. So he'll definitely be an important piece, most likely off the bench for him. So other leaders, DeAndre Jordan led the team in rebounds with 10 per game. Interesting to note, he only played 22 minutes per game, and I believe he only started 6 games. So this was the same DeAndre Jordan. Yep, Jared Allen was primarily starting, and he was second on the team in rebounds with 9.6, and Taurean Prince with 6. Their assist leader was Spencer Dinwiddie with 6.8, Kyrie Irving in second with 6.4, Karis LeVert in third, 4.4. Steal leader, also Kyrie Irving, while he played during his 20 games with 1.4, Karis LeVert with 1.2. Their block leader was Jared Allen, who started at center for him at 1.3. So that's it for their season leaders. I'll kick it over to Caveman, and he'll tell you who he was impressed with and get the conversation rolling.
Okay. First, start their plus-minus leader was Joe Harris at plus 1.2.
All right.
So you know that little tidbit of information. Quickly before we get into the actual players, we talked about it when it happened. We kind of did it. It was kind of like I believe it was kind of a mid-live announcement that Steve Nash was hired as the Nets head coach. We said that I love the hire. I mean, I think when you talk, especially when you got a team like the Nets and you got the two superstars, you kind of have to please the two superstars.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you bring in a coach that they don't like, and it's just gonna go horribly wrong for you. But the fact that Kevin Durant really likes Steve Nash, and Steve Nash, you want to talk about kind of like the old school point guard, him and Amari Stoudemire days. That's kind of more of old school stuff that I actually enjoyed I didn't really enjoy too much of the old school way, but him and Stoudemire was a hell of a combo. I think his skill set can translate to being a successful head coach. I mean, you gotta kind of wait and see. It is kind of a bit of an unknown how these situations of former players turn in with no previous head coaching experience. So I get the little bit of skepticism, with no head coaching experience, but it's not like this is something that's never happened before. So I think you gotta think great opportunity for Nash, and I'm hoping that this works out for him. Uh, as far as guys that impressed me, I mean, you already mentioned uh, Cab Cabarro. Is it Cabarro or Cabaret?
Cabarro.
Cabarro. I mean, he was impressive in the bubble, so I'll just say that. But I think you gotta look at Karis LeVert, and he was hurt for a decent part of the year. He didn't play. He played in 30-something games, I believe. I forgot the exact number, but I believe it was around 30 or so, 30-something games. But like I said, he averaged 19 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. And we were talking about this before we started here. But the biggest, now that when you talk about Karis LeVert, you talk about the biggest thing is, I believe that he fits with the Nets going forward. But there's a lot of sense around their front office and their big decision makers that he's not the third he can't be the third star that they're looking for, so they might be trying to package him with some other pieces to go and get that third superstar. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that real quick. What do you think about the Nets looking to shop LeVert to try to get that third superstar?
So, I mean, let's first look at the teams that are left in the NBA playoffs right now. The Miami Heat, how many superstars do they have? One, and a bunch of role players.
Yeah.
How many do the Boston Celtics have? I would say only one at this point, and some guys that could get there with Jalen Brown.
I think Jason Tatum's that guy.
He's definitely the number one right now. But
I was somewhere between all-stars, not quite a superstar, definitely all-star, but somewhere. Same with Jalen Brown, but they have only one superstar.
So, I mean, it's definitely not a Kyrie and Kevin Durant combination. And then you have the Lakers. How many superstars do they have? 2. The Clippers, how many do they have? 2. How many do the Rockets have? 2. So my question is, do you need a third superstar, or is that just the thing of the past few years? I think you need to build a more complete team because, I think it shows when you have 3 superstars. You just can't afford depth. I mean, that's the reality of it. And the Nets, I would say right now, with their roster, how it's constructed, if they bring Joe Harris back too, this is the deepest roster in the NBA. I was counting the number of quality guys that they have to play minutes. It's 11, and I mean, these are guys not like, they're okay. I mean, these are names that everybody knows. So for me, if you can keep those 2 superstars, Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie, and I mentioned this to you before we started recording, I think they can make up defensively for what Durant and Kyrie Irving lack too. I think they're perfect complements, and I don't think you need another superstar. I've read a lot of rumors, actually, that they've been looking at potentially pairing Dinwiddie or maybe Karis LeVert or a combination for DeMar DeRozan to the Spurs because the Spurs are trying to move on from DeRozan. I mean, that's an interesting fit, but I wouldn't get rid of my depth to get DeMar DeRozan personally.
I think DeMar DeRozan's better than Karis LeVert.
Oh, he's definitely better than both of those. But if you have to give up LeVert plus picks plus a few depth pieces for DeRozan, that's stupid. I mean, don't do that. They're constructed right now, and I know you thought because I don't like Kyrie Irving.
I'm saying that, but as a Spurs fan, you should be encouraging that.
Oh, man, yeah, as a Spurs fan, I love it. But if you're the Nets, you're stupid. Are you kidding me? That'd be so dumb. But, I mean, the reality is, and I know I've mentioned before I don't like Kyrie Irving, but this team right now, the way that it's constructed, can win a championship right now. I think they're constructed similarly to how the Pistons with Chauncey Billups were, except that they have 2 superstars. It's like putting that solid team plus you add 2 superstars. So this is a team that will 100% be in the championship contention conversations if they keep this roster. I just don't like when people start tinkering and toying, and you have a great roster. Play it out. Don't worry. If you play through the season and maybe they don't mesh well, that's a different conversation, but I don't see any reason they can. So I like how they're constructed, and I always say don't get cute, and this is an opportunity. Don't get cute. Play it out. They can beat the Bucks easily right now, I think, in the playoffs. Bucks have shown themselves to be very vulnerable, and there's no reason they can't compete with the Celtics, the Heat, the Raptors, any of these top teams. So they need to just see it through and let it play out.
Yeah, that's kind of. I mean, that's been may have been it's been the biggest storyline surrounding the Nets this offseason is that those rumors there. So yeah, I mean other than Karis LeVert, I mean the kind of injuries kind of prevented anybody from being overly impressive. Not a lot. Their core group of guys didn't really play together that much. I mean, not just in the bubble, but they were kind of injury riddled like the entire year. Like Dinwiddie missed time, LeVert missed time, but like everybody missed time. So Jared Allen, I think he showed some real flashes as well as kind of like that solid rim protector and a guy, especially I think he meshes very well with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. You put Jared Allen kind of as like a stopper in the middle for him. DeAndre Jordan at this point, like, who really cares that he's in the league at this point? Like, what is he doing? Like, but Jared Allen, I think, fits very well with Durant and Kyrie. So that's going to be a big, interesting piece, especially when we talk about the Nets and obviously the offensive firepower that Kyrie and Durant bring. But then you kind of anchor them defensively with Jared Allen, and then you're talking about something here.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. Let's go over their current depth chart right now. I mean, I was impressed with Jared Allen as well. I think he can anchor a defense. He's impressive on that end. His offensive game isn't fantastic, but when you have Kyrie and Durant, how fantastic do they need him to be on the offensive end?
Is something that's going to have to be. That's why I think that's part of the reason why he didn't play as much. He struggled with those fouls.
Yep. That's for sure. So as the depth chart stands right now, at the point, we've mentioned most of these names. Kyrie Irving starting at the 1, Spencer Dinwiddie coming off the bench. And, I mean, we didn't even really talk about Dinwiddie being impressive, but the guy averaged over 20 points this season. And I realize they had a lot of injuries, but he still was very solid on that end as well. And he's always been a pesky, annoying, good defender. And I think he's kind of their version of Marcus Smart here. And actually, he's probably very comparable to Marcus Smart, honestly.
And Spencer Dinwiddie was on an episode a while now. So
well, that's all that matters now. Why do they think they need a third superstar, and they have a guy that was on Wild and then out.
I don't. Just going off topic a tad here, but I don't know if you. Obviously, I know you've heard. I know you've heard of the show. They kind of did the let me holler with the women, and he was the guy that they were hitting on. And that was hilarious. You gotta check that out with Spencer Dinwiddie.
I haven't seen that one. I will.
You gotta check that out.
Let's see. Did I say the 2? I don't even remember if I did. I'll say it again. Their starting shooting guard is Caris LeVert. Behind him right now they have Garrett Temple. Tyler Johnson is also their third point guard and third 2 guard. We'll mention him in a minute here. Their starting 3, if Joe Harris is still on the roster, is Joe Harris. They have Cabarrot behind him and Garrett Temple, who's a nice veteran off the bench as well. Right now, their starting 4 is listed as Kevin Durant. Behind him, they have Taurean Prince, Cabarrot. At center, then you're kind of set with Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan as of right now. So let's talk. I'll bring up their few free agents while I'm talking about it, then kick it over to Caveman here. Joe Harris is probably the biggest name right now. You mentioned Cabarrot earlier. He had a non-guaranteed contract that the Nets can choose to guarantee. I don't see why they wouldn't. At this point, it's a for $1.8 million. So I would expect Cabarrot to be back. But Joe Harris is a free agent. Wilson Chandler, who's on the roster apparently. Jamal Crawford, they signed in the bubble, so he's technically on their payroll right now. A bunch of names that they filled in because they needed warm bodies for the bubble, realistically, here. When you talk about Lance Thomas, Tyler Johnson, Justin Anderson, Donta Hall, two guys that were on two-way contracts. This is for Caveman, Jeremiah Martin, and Chris Chioza. So that's their upcoming free agents. What notes do you have, Caveman?
I mean, I remember you were hearing when we were when I was doing the daily recap for the bubble. Jeremiah Martin and Chris Chuiza. I don't even know. That's a weird combination there. But they were often among their leaders every night and
They were.
stuff. I mean, granted, that's not saying much. I think obviously, Joe Harris is a bit interesting name, but I don't see. I think pretty much the consensus around the league is that they're not going to be able to retain him. Mm-hmm. He's very likely going to be somewhere else next season. That's just the reality of the situation. They're how they're set up currently. They can't afford. They're paying Kyrie. They're paying Kevin Durant. You can't then pay Joe Harris, who, based on his excellent three-point shooting, is going to command over $20 million, probably in the $24 million range or something. Not going to get a max deal. I mean, that'd be insane for Joe Harris to get a max deal just because of his shooting. But he's going to get over $20 million. That's just not. Then that's obviously can't afford that. So, I mean, Garrett Temple has that club option for 4.7. I mean, not terrible, but I mean, for a guy of his caliber, that's pretty solid. That's a pretty solid price. So I could see them picking that up. But yeah, as far as Joe Harris is interesting, but at the same time, not really, because there's little to no chance they're going to be able to keep him.
Yeah, they do have the fourth highest salary cap right now, so not a lot of space. I don't think that they'd be able to afford that contract unless they made some cuts elsewhere, and I'm not really seeing, unless they make some deals, where that money's coming from. So most likely, I think they would sign him if they had the cap for it, but it's just a matter of, especially with Cabarrot coming through, he definitely can play some tough minutes for him. But one thing, let's focus on it, because I think it's going to be a big topic conversation, and we've kind of mentioned already, is just if they should trade for someone. And I've talked about it a little bit, but I'm going to throw some names out there and see what you think. Okay. So number one, I mentioned Kevin Durant starting at the 4 right now. So there's some rumors that they're going to be searching for kind of like a mid-level guy that can play the 4 for them. Because realistically, if they lose Joe Harris, you could just say Durant plays the 3 and then move someone into those 4 minutes. There's some rumors Cabarrot might just fill that in, but they've been connected to Aaron Gordon recently. That's an interesting name. I think that, we've mentioned he has that upside. He hasn't been a superstar, but if you throw him in this environment, that's interesting. But here's 7 superstar players that beat writers have.
7?
7. And these are superstars, I would say. Well, yeah, I mean borderline, but I'm going to throw out these names, and these have come from beat writers, and I'm going to see who you think fits in the best. So I'm going to list the names, and then I'll let you roll.
Okay.
And this is going in reverse order of their caliber. So number 7 is LaMarcus Aldridge. 6 is Zach LaVine. 5, Ben Simmons. 4, Joel Embiid. 3, Donovan Mitchell. 2, Devin Booker. And 1, Bradley Beal.
Wow, I don't see how many of those are realistic.
They've been reported by beat writers.
I mean, I guess if you had the. Boy, if I had the.
I don't know.
I think realistically, I could see them getting a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're thinking, I'm just thinking on the more realistic side, I think that's something they could probably actually pull off. And I think that would be I think he would kind of fit very well in that in what they're gonna try to do there. But if you're talking about I know that you aren't a fan of them getting a third superstar. But if you put Bradley Beal on the Brooklyn Nets and you have Kyrie Irving, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant, how I don't care what kind of success super teams or what kind of success teams are having now with only two. If you have the opportunity to pair Kyrie Irving, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant together on the same team, you do it. I mean, come on now. I know you're not a fan of it, but Bradley Beal, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. Come on now. That's instant title contention.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Bradley Beal wouldn't even be my number one option. I mean, I love Devin Booker. I've mentioned before.
Okay.
I mean, he's 23 years old still. I think he can play off the ball a little bit. I mean, Bradley Beal can too, but
I'm thinking more realistically. I think Bradley Beal's more realistic for them to get than Devin Booker. I think the Suns are more. I think the Suns are going to be more inclined to keep Booker than the Wizards will Beal. Because, I mean, realistically, I don't think either one of them are going to leave either situation. But
I think Bradley Beal could. He's
good. I think Bradley Beal wants. I think the reports are Bradley Beal wants to stay in Washington, but because he did sign a 2-year extension or something like that. Or he signed a little. Because I'm pretty sure he has 2 more years under contract. Bradley Beal, but.
Yeah, I mean Bradley Beal for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, he would fit in really well with them. I mean, I think he is realistic as well too. I mean, Washington's not going to win. If this guy wants to win a championship, why not go to a championship contender? I mean, an interesting name, and I thought maybe you would say is the Donovan Mitchell, because I know you mentioned several times some worries about that team chemistry there, and if those worries or that's an actual concern that they have internally, I mean, it might make sense to move on from Donovan Mitchell, and I think he would be an interesting fit next to them. As far as any of those big guys like Joel Embiid, I don't think makes sense. Zach LaVine, from what I've heard, wants to be the man on his team, and so I don't think he'd want to play third fiddle. Maybe
he's the man in Chicago.
He is. I mean, that's what he likes. Ben Simmons, I think, would be a terrible fit.
I think that's the thing. The fact that he's in Chicago and he's kind of. I don't want to be too harsh and say he put up empty numbers.
He always did.
That's what it kind of He appeared. I mean, he's very talented and he's a star for sure. But it seems like playing on the Bulls, he looks a lot better than he actually is.
No.
So, but yeah, I mean, Joel Embiid. Joel. I don't like Joel Embiid at all.
That doesn't make sense either.
I mean, that personality? I don't think would mesh very well with that situation. Steve Nash is going to kind of bring more of a no nonsense mindset and kind of not be really strict, but I don't think Steve Nash and Joel Embiid would mesh well together at all. So I mean, but LaMarcus Aldridge is a realistic, I wouldn't be shocked if they end up going that route. So
I don't think it'll be expensive either because his contract is so big right now. The Spurs just want to move on from it. So realistically, you could probably get Aldridge for maybe even a couple draft picks. You might not. Well, they're going to have to flip some contracts because they wouldn't have space for him. But yeah, I mean, I think if they can make it financially work, that would make sense. They could slot him right in at that 4, and I think he would fit in pretty well. I also do think DeRozan would fit in well with the Nets. I just don't think that they should give up the farm for him. So I think it's an interesting offseason for the Nets because they can stay put in their championship contender, and they can also make moves and still be a championship contender. So I think it's going to be a really fun offseason. A lot of those names, I will say, they're probably not realistic, and those are just reports, but it's still fun to talk about. So if you're like, oh, you guys aren't being realistic, you're just no fun. I'm sorry. We're just talking about some potential the name. So let's go. They do have a draft pick here. So as much as they probably aren't going to be active in free agency, more in the trade market, if anything, but they do have the 18th overall pick that they acquired. So let's talk a little bit about who they can potentially target there. I'll start off here. I think it can be a combination of one of two things. I mean, the first for me, if Joe Harris is leaving, I don't know if the scoring piece is as important because they have Kyrie and Kevin Durant coming back. But for me, I still think they need to focus on having some strong defenders surrounding those guys. So I'm looking at some of those mid-tier guys we've talked about before that have some defensive upside, like Sadiq Bey and Josh Green. Or they could go the route if they're looking to fill that spot for the 4. They could go a Jaden McDaniel from Washington, who's 6'10", maybe Precious Achiuwa to fill in some minutes there. Patrick Williams probably won't make it that far, but he's a guy that can play some minutes at the 4. So I think they're going to go one of those two ways, is either try to find a defensive-minded player that they can throw into the rotation, or a guy that can play some minutes at the 4 for them.
Yeah, you kind of hit on the two guys that I was looking at. I was looking at Sadiq Bey and Patrick Williams. I'm looking at the latest mock draft. They definitely do not have them going that route. They have them taking Tyrese Maxey out of Kentucky. I mean, I think they're basically saying that he's gonna. I think a lot of people thought, at least for the Nets for the draft, is if they don't re-sign Joe Harris, they're just going to replace him in the draft. I think that's what a lot of people are getting at. And looking this over, I mean, I think that's what they're thinking here with the. I mean, if that's what they're going to do, then I'd like Tyrese Maxey at that spot. If that's what they're going to do, I'm with you. I don't think that's the route they should go. I don't think they need to. But yeah, I think you hit on the two names that I had down. But a lot of mocks that I've seen don't have them going that route, and they have them going the replace Joe Harris route. So kind of getting probably the best shooter available at that spot for them.
And I believe that I said they had the 18th overall pick. They actually have the 19th overall, so I think I misspoke there. But either way, they have kind of a mid-round pick there, which is nice for them because they traded one away and got another one back. So they have some flexibility to add to that rotation realistically, because whoever they draft isn't going to be counted on to play big minutes right away.
You mentioned Josh. Man, Josh Green's falling in drafts for some reason. I have no idea why. But they have right now, man, just a little off topic, because you brought up Josh Green. They have Josh Green signed all the way down to 24th.
Yeah, so it's possible he'll be there for him.
To the Milwaukee Bucks. Oh, I would love that.
Oh God, here we go.
I would never shut up if Josh Green went. As we know, he's my favorite player in this draft. If the Bucks got Josh Green, oh my.
And I do want to mention, completely even more off topic, that Marcus Howard has crept his way into mock drafts now. So that's even, yeah, I'm looking at one where he's going 56th overall to the Charlotte Hornets. So I've clicked through a few, and a few of them have him sneaking in, though. He must be really working out hard in quarantine here. So
that'd be nice, man. I'd like it.
I mean, it's off topic, but in today's NBA, if you can score like that, to me, you should get drafted at least. And maybe he won't carve out a role, but he has enough offensive ability where it'd be dumb if he doesn't have a role. So, completely off topic. Let's go back to the Nets here. We got to talk about Josh Green and Marcus Howard for some reason, but that's fine. Let's go back. We only have to wrap up here by looking forward to what we think they can do next season. I've already kind of mentioned it, but the Eastern Conference, I think at the top is really interesting, honestly. But the Nets are going to be right in contention, and it's just another name to throw in the ring. And when you look at the Eastern Conference playoffs this year. They've been really fun, and we just wrapped up a great series with the Raptors and Celtics. The Heat are a fun team. The Bucks, even though I had a disappointing exit, they're still going to be in the conversation. Then you can definitely throw the Nets into that mix. I think that's the top 5 next year. If you ask me who's the favorite to win the championship, I mean, I think it's anybody's game, honestly. I would say the Nets may struggle in year 1 just because it may take some time to gel together. But realistically, by the time playoff basketball rolls around, they're going to be gelled. So they could be a dangerous team come playoff time, and don't be surprised if they're in the championship conversation.
Oh, yeah, they're 100. Even if they don't, which I have a strong feeling that Karis LeVert will not be there next season. I think I think there's opportunity for them to get a third superstar that they want. I think there's opportunity for them, so I think they're definitely gonna try to go that route. But even as currently constructed, you're talking. I mean, this is what we've been talking. This is what people have been saying for an entire year now. I mean, this was basically a throwaway season for the.
And they made the playoffs, yeah.
And they made the play, but that's what I'm saying. I didn't mention about Kyrie, but I think that's why I mentioned surprised that Kyrie Irving played 20 games. I think it was basically just to throw him out there for a show. I don't think really they had much intention with Kyrie. I think they just maybe they did it to avoid NBA fines or something like that. Probably, to be honest with you. They probably did it to avoid some sort of NBA fines for sitting guys or whatnot or whatever. But looking forward to next season. They can compete with any team in the NBA next season. I mean, there's next season you add the Nets into the mix with Kyrie and KD, Dinwiddie, Jared Allen. You're talking depth all over the place, which is why they don't really have that many holes. I mean, they have 2 of the best players in the league, so they're a title contending team. Bottom line, they can win it. I can see them. I mean, they might end up being like a 3-4, 3-5 range next season because it might take them a while to gel. Their regular season seed might not be among at the top, but come playoff time, they're going to be playing like a top seeded team. And too early for predictions on who's going to win, but they're going to be there. I will say they will be in the Eastern Conference Finals next year versus.
Oh, we don't even know what their roster is. That's bold.
Hey, they have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. That much we know.
2 champions.
Eastern Conference Finals next year for them.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, they could, like I said, they can win the whole thing. So, any final thoughts?
Nope. I think we got it.
All right. So we're going to keep rolling with this series and then hopefully have some NBA prospect profiles if we can find time to slip that in with all these episodes that we're going to have over the next few weeks here.
24 hours straight. I think that's what we should do.
24 hours straight of NBA content.
We'll instead of doing pods, let's do a 24-hour live stream of an NBA draft special. 24-hour live stream just talking about prospects.
The top 100 prospects in the draft will go over. But we have lots of content coming out for the NBA in the next few weeks. Obviously, we're in the middle of the playoffs right now, too, and we've been going live recapping those games. So make sure you check that out in the Fantasy Hotspot. And I mention every time we had lots of conversation going there. Keep that going. Make sure you subscribe to the Fantasy Mafia on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts and get a notification anytime any NBA, MLB, or NFL content goes up. So we're releasing at least 1 pod every single day. So lots to look forward to for you guys, lots to look forward to for us recording it. So we always appreciate all the support. And if you have any comments, as always, feel free to leave them. But if not, we will see you guys next time.
Yep.